Welcome back, Flyers Nitty Gritty fans, to the Getting Gritty with It podcast with your host, Yariv, Wolok, and my returning guest and one of our best writers for the site, Lance Green. Lance, welcome back to the show, buddy.
Yeah, no problem. I appreciate the offer coming on with you.
Yeah, dude, it's good to have you on. And those who are not aware, if you guys do read our articles, Lance is responsible for a large chunk of them. He's been kicking butt. Make sure you check it out and make sure you look out for certain writers. People write to us about, I don't agree with your opinion on this. And some people argue with stuff, but we all have our own opinions, right? And Lance and I don't have the same opinion on things, but I always really like your opinions. And there's even been some times where and I remember one specific case where you were you wrote an article and you're like, the Flyers need more toughness. And I remember I'm like, do they really? Is that really what I'm concerned about? And then down the road, 10, 15 games down the road, it hit us where we got into more physical and you're like, man, they could have just used one more guy. So it's just an example of some of Lance's writing and definitely to look out for. So, and Lance, thank you for all the hard work.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. So let's get into it. Let's get down to the nitty gritty. We got some good stuff to talk about, some bad stuff to talk about. But let's talk about the most recent game. Let's start off with that. Actually, real quick, let me do a shout out to this. I'm going to forget otherwise. Shout out to Jim's Steaks on South. They're Flyers fans. Make sure you go to Jim's Steaks. Make sure you grab a cheesesteaks. They're Flyers fans. That's why we work with them. And we're excited to have them and partner with them. Anyway, so on to the game. Lake Tahoe, Flyers play the Bruins. Half AHL roster, at least on the forward front. COVID hit the Flyers pretty hard. Flyers lose that game. They blow it pretty badly, 7-3. Really overall, just because of a really poorly played second period. They probably shouldn't have won the game because talent, they're obviously outmatched in that game. But they did put together a decent effort for 40 minutes and a not very good effort for 20.
Right.
Lance, you were watching the game tightly. What were your impressions? What did you take away from that game? How do you feel?
Yeah, well, I think they approached it wrong coming into it in a few cases. Yes, we obviously knew we were going to be injury ridden, and it was a lineup just thrown together. And Boston has definitely had our number over the course of this year and last, and everything. But the one thing I didn't understand was the call-ups. Okay, David Kase definitely, lighting it up at the AHL and overseas in the Czech Republic, coming over once the season started. But the biggest thing in my mind that stood out was an article I just wrote about as well, is why no Zayd Wisdom? And that was my thing. And I kind of got.
I do want to talk about him later.
I got a little flack about that and all, and because he's so young. But the kid's leading the team in points in the AHL and is a winger and a center. He can play both positions, and he would obviously be more help than playing a guy like Mark Friedman, who hasn't played defense since he was 8 years old.
I mean, forward.
Haven't played forward since he was 8 years old.
I do want to talk about Freedsy too. Yeah, go ahead, please.
To put in that position, it seems like he would have been a lot better off there. Obviously, do I think he would change the outlook of the game and the Flyers win? Probably not. In that sense.
Well, but to your point, he's more suited for a fourth line role than a David Kasha or bottom six. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Right. No, and you're absolutely right. Just some of the lineups, spots and positions they put players in. I thought they did a better job with call-ups previously with Morgan Frost. They put him up with a higher line and balanced out all four. Obviously, when you're missing two lines of forwards, it's kind of hard to do that. But I believe they could have done a little bit better entering into this game.
I completely agree with your assessment. I was very confused with the fourth line. I love, and I'll be honest with you, I love Morin and I love Friedman, especially their personalities. Okay. Mm-hmm. I'm all for it. But again, you're going into a game where you're already outmatched, you're already short. You're going to put two players who are defensemen at forward, two of them.
And I'm
like, you're essentially asking your fourth line to be ineffective. in most scenarios in that game. And I think in a game where you're already shorthand offensively, I was dumbfounded by that decision. I understand from a physicality standpoint, maybe Friedman brings a little more physical game, but still he's playing at a position with another guy who's playing at a position with a guy who also plays in the AHL primarily.
Yeah, setting them up for failure for sure.
Yeah, that's the right way of saying it. It's like, I'm sure it wasn't their intent, right? But when you really look at it, you didn't give him a high chance of success there.
No.
And then to see Friedman waived after that, I'm not knocking the coaches here. I don't want to knock anybody, but it seems a little bit weird, to see a guy waived after getting put in a position. I don't want to say to fail, but kind of to fail. They're giving him a shot, but they're also not the type of shot he needs. And I also don't think Kasha necessarily deserved to be benched. But to your wisdom point, and I think he is too young. Having said that, so is Joel Farabee. So is Sean Couturier. So are all these other guys. We had an opportunity here. I don't think that they were aware he's as good as he is. I don't think I was ready for how good he is. And I think there's something to be said here. Maybe he'll lose it. Okay, maybe wisdom. Let's just say I think he has 4 goals, 3 games at this point. Mm-hmm. Two goal games. To do that at 18 is essentially unheard of for most prospects. One, they don't get the opportunity to begin with because you're not there at 18. But again, he's playing against men. He's not playing against children, and he is playing a top line role right now. To your point, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets called up soon. If he continues, how do you deny him?
Yeah, I don't know how you deny him in that sense. And the biggest thing here is you could have argued the fact that, hey, he's playing with, David and some of these other guys that are helping him out. But what did he do after they left? He had another 2-goal game and carried the team by himself pretty much with everybody that was called up. He basically was playing with a bunch of ECHL players at that point. So, and he still produced. He is physical. He is versatile, in which we need in that sense in a call up. So I don't know why they didn't go to him. Obviously, probably because of his age and his experience level at the pros. But as you alluded to, some players just have it and can make that jump a lot easier than others. Yes. And I think he is definitely one of them, and his game projects to that. If you looked at the preseason game in which the Flyers played themselves, he stood out to me every single time he touched the ice, whether it was laying a big check, a good defensive comeback play, getting into the zone. He did it all in my mind. Do I think he's going to come into the NHL and, be the next 30-goal scorer right out the bat? No, I don't. But in that sense, in that short-term need of a guy, it was a perfect opportunity to see what he did have. And I don't think that the team was expecting him to stay up and be the savior for this team this season. But he could have had that one-game shot that he was so deserving of with his play recently.
Yeah. I think he shocked them. I'll be honest with you. I remember, so Nick, obviously you remember this, but Nick Suzuki played incredibly well against the Flyers in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. If you listen to the Canadians, and I believe it was Bergevin that I heard say this, they absolutely did not expect that from him.
Right.
They did not think, oh, we're going to put this kid in and he's going to be one of our best players. They thought he would be forgettable to some degree. He'd have a couple moments.
Right.
They didn't think he'd be an impact player. He showed them on the ice he would. And I think the same thing happening out with Wisdom. Maybe they're like, oh yeah, it's a great one game, right? But he's still 18. He's going to, we all do it, right?
Sure.
And I think guys like Kasha and Shusko were playing against men. I think they got the benefit of the doubt. They always do, right? The benefit always do. But if this continues, I think it'll be undeniable. And I completely agree with what you said that note at the end. His game actually might be more translatable, and his personality. I know he's had some pain and suffering in his life. That's usually a good sign that somebody can go into the NHL. But there are certain guys who are just mentally more mature. And I think he might be one of them. And it is what it takes to make the next level. Like, we don't know. You look at his first year juniors. I brought this up last week. His numbers were, you would never think this kid would get drafted. The following year, he has very good numbers, right? Mm-hmm. Playing with an elite line, right? But also looking good on it. And then again, look at the jump this year, playing against men. It's every single year he's gotten like 100% better.
Right. If you hear this kid talk, he's
Mature.
about it. He's mature. He knows what he's capable of, and he has belief in himself in doing so. And with that, he just wants it more than anybody, I think, on the team, in the system altogether. He wants this. Yeah. I mean, that's a tough one there for sure.
You're talking out loud. I got excited. Yeah. I was like, what a good pick. Sorry.
Yeah. What a great pick. I mean, that was definitely kudos goes to,
aggressive trade.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. It was aggressive to jump up. I mean, maybe, not so much as a jump up to the first round would be, but definitely an aggressive jump up to get him. And that was just a case of the Flyers not expecting him to be there, and he was high on their board, and they did everything they had to do to be able to get him.
Yeah, Flyers have been nailing these picks. I love it. We start off with Lake Tahoe. We go down path. We're just talking about Wisdom the whole time. Let's go back to. I do want to talk about the Phantoms in general, and we'll probably talk about Wisdom again.
Sure.
Let's go back to Tahoe real quick. So, first period, Flyers played pretty well. Okay, I would argue they were competitive, and I would say with the players missing, I think that's a really nice achievement. Is that you can put in these other players and they can still play well. Second period, they lost a good portion of the pace that they were playing with, and then obviously Carter Hart didn't have his best game as well. Gave up a couple soft ones after already, giving it not. The team didn't play that well. It wasn't really his fault, but they gave up a couple soft goals, and then that's it. Like the game was done. Right? You go into the third period, you're fighting a little bit. And I like that they fought. I like they scored again, but I don't want to take too much from this game personally. I think those lineup impacts are immense. I think the stoppage in between, the stop and go. I think, again, we're playing the Bruins. This is not your average team. They're a team who will make you suffer with these, like the Rangers. We could have beat them. Like that's crazy. We could have beat them after all of that, missing all those. Bruins, they're going to make you suffer. Do you take that loss as a large indicator, or do you kind of think of it the way I do, where it's kind of like, you couldn't have thrown them in a worse position really to win that game?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. I think that it definitely stands to take notice of some things. Mm-hmm. And I think the elite teams that we're going to play against are just bringing this out more and more. I'm actually working on an article right now on it. And basically, it boils down to we missed that Matt Niskanen, that shutdown defender. And we don't have that. Provorov can't do it all. He's playing 27 games or 27 minutes a night right now or more, near the top in the entire league. He can't do it all himself. Nope. These guys on defense with Sanheim and Myers, 165, 163, and they're not very physical. Just lazily poke checking the elite players like Pasternak and Ovechkin and Barzal and you name them, Eichel, and expecting them to just still be able to get the puck away from somebody like that on that caliber of player is crazy in my mind. I don't think they're clearing out the front of the net in front of Carter Hart and allowing them to see the shots like he should be able to. It's just a lot of small things.
I agree.
I saw in that Lake Tahoe game, being a goaltender and usually sitting back and watching these plays happen in front of me, just dissecting it a little bit. And they weren't even playing the way they're supposed to be playing plays, where a player was bringing down the puck into the offensive zone, and it's a 2-on-1. Instead of playing the pass and protecting them from an open ice pass where the goalie's going to have to go across the crease to get set up and take that shot and allow that shooter along the boards to take a not so great shot and expect the goalie to be able to see it clearly and all that. They played the shot rather than playing the pass, and opened ice right up, forcing that play to the open man, and it just creates crazy opportunities
Chaos
for the other team. And it's just basics, defense 101 that you learn as a kid that these guys aren't really doing. And I don't know if maybe the defensive coach needs to, get a handle on things. Look at the PK. We're near the league's bottom in that as well. So I don't think it's all, Carter Hart's fault in this sense. Yes. Did he play, not his best game? For sure. He didn't play his best game, but are the people in front of him that are supposed to be helping him really helping him? They're not. And, I think he's getting
they'd agree. Yeah, I think they would agree with you.
Right. I think he's getting a little Carson Wentz treatment right now from Philadelphia fans. I mean, Carson Wentz's offensive line was a hodgepodge of, characters being thrown in off positions and everything else. And, Carson Wentz was expected to do it all, and clearly he couldn't. Yeah. So he gets traded. Among other things, but I think that's what I'm hearing on Twitter and other things, that Carter Hart needs to be traded and he's a bust and all this crazy talk.
That's absolute insanity. Anytime I hear anybody complain about Carter Hart, all I say to them, listen, he's not supposed to be here. So the fact that he's already better than every goalie in the system tells me that you have no idea what you're talking about. So just relax. Goalies have mediocre games or even bad games, and they're still great players. And teams have bad games. Teams play poorly.
Sure.
Boston played poorly for times last year, and then rocked it the whole second half of the year, which, by the way, the Flyers tend to do, including actually Jamie brought this up, Nolan Patrick. Jamie actually has a great tweet. Jamie Baskow, for those who are not aware, has a great tweet about Carter Hart. That if you remove the games against Boston, which you obviously can't do, overall on the large scale, because we haven't played that many games, but his numbers are actually fantastic if you don't include the Boston games, which, to your point that you were making, is clearly a team problem. We're not able to keep up with the Bruins, which is not a talent issue. It's an execution issue. It's the little plays. And I do think partially it has to do with the lost practices, the lost positions. I do think that's a huge role in those little plays, knowing who's going to be where. But it has been an issue all year round, where last year wasn't. And to your point about Matt Niskanen, there is a calming effect that Matt Niskanen brings that is clearly missing on the back end. The talent is there, but that ability to slow down the game, to even maybe be more physical in a time where you're playing a veteran like Ovechkin, maybe you're a little hesitant because you're 23 and you're playing one of the greatest players of all time, where Niskanen's like, I know you. He just throws a hand in his, and it's like his buddy even. And I think there is something there. I think Matt Niskanen was a great defenseman. He's a beautiful complementary defenseman. His loss is, it's definitely felt. But the PK thing and the power play thing seems to me like it's a coaching issue. And I'm not saying it's an issue with the coach overall, but it seems like it's an adjustment that needs to be made by coaching. The penalty kill has been like, I don't know.
God awful.
Scared, maybe?
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know. I don't know how else to put it on that.
The system in place by AV works when it's done right.
5-on-5.
Right, it works. But even the penalty kill works when it's done right. But I'm seeing easy mistakes, like I said. How do you leave a guy like Ovechkin set up in his office on top of the face-off dots all alone? Why is somebody not physically on his six at all times? Mm-hmm. I don't care who else is out on the ice. When you have a guy that scored that many goals in the NHL, you tend to pay attention to him normally. And they're just leaving these top line talents wide open, as they did with Pasternak in these games in Boston. Two hat tricks, back-to-back games with hat tricks.
Unacceptable.
Why is somebody not watching this guy a little closer? Obviously, he's one of the best players in the league. I get that. But why doesn't he have somebody on his six at all times? And that needs to be addressed in the locker room, in the before games and everything, pre-planning and everything like that. Like that should be something you go without even having to say, in my mind.
No, it's a really interesting point, because now that I'm thinking about it, it's almost like the same thing that's wrong with the power play. Is the power play doesn't seem to have much intent put into it. It's kind of like, okay, I have this like bag of tricks and I have a bunch of good players and I'm going to send them out and hopefully they make the right decision in that right time. But when the Flyers had their best power play, there was a lot of intent and Claude Giroux ran that power play. I brought this up a ton. He ran the power play. If you watch the power play, he's the quarterback. It's predictable, right? Just like Ovechkin is predictable, but it is irrelevant. This man is more talented. He thinks a little quicker, right? You can run through that. I'm not saying we have to run through things through G, though I'd prefer it, but it doesn't seem like there is necessarily that. Those roles don't seem to be well defined on the power play.
Well,
like the shot in the slot, to the Simmons role, the Couturier. We don't have that anymore. At least it doesn't feel that way.
right. I think the one thing that the power play is missing is what the team is missing in general is a pure sniper. You have yeah, exactly. You have Giroux, who's a pass first player and very good at it. You have Voracek, which is another pass first guy. Okay. That's Farabee,
he's the closest one.
He's the closest thing to a sniper. He's a kid. He's going to grow into that more and more, hopefully. But we did address with JVR's now deciding to play and buy into the system, which is great. But he's that stand in front of the net guy, screens, redirections, deflections, rebounds. Great. But we don't have that sniper that can drill that puck in. Gustafsson has been that guy from the point at times, but he's so bad defensively. It's troubling.
But to that point, though, yeah, he's been better. I do agree. In the beginning, it was very troubling. He's been less noticeable on that aspect. I think they're using him a little differently too, but they don't really give him that shot on the off wing, on the offhand anymore. That is one of his biggest benefits, and we don't do that at all. Actually, on the power play, there is no lined up one big time shot. Everybody's on their on hand, and there's nobody even on the board. I just feel like it's not creative enough. It's not dangerous enough. Like it's relying more on the way they play 5-on-5, which I can appreciate. But we have a 2-minute window, and I want to get a big shot on net. I want to cause chaos, and I don't necessarily see that. Does that make sense? What I'm saying?
It does make sense. And I think it would work if you then had that other role, that sniper, to get that big shot and just knows when to take it, and when to take that little time that the goalie screen for a second and just let it go. I think we pass a little bit too much, but that's the players that are. That's the nature of the players, rather, that we have on the power play with G and Voracek.
That's the one thing I always thought that they would do with Ghost, and I think they tried it a little bit. They never really dedicated anything to it. Is get him off the point, right, where he doesn't have to handle that. Keep Provorov there, right, or put Sanheim, whatever unit you're playing. Get him against the boards on the offhand. He has a huge shot. Obviously, he hasn't been as accurate as he used to be, but if he can get that blistering, powerful shot on net, it does cause a similar effect to something, not like Ovechkin, obviously, but is the closest thing we have to a sniper, really. Like you said, we really don't have that true power shoot. We haven't had that since Gagne or Jeff Carter, really, right? We haven't had. They're rare. They're also pretty rare. It's not like you can't score without them, but it is. It's not like I'm with you. If we had that, I think it would be easier to score, but I do think we can solve it with that. I think back to like utilizing even Braden Shen and Couturier, right, in the middle in that slot. Or even Scott Hartnell. None of those guys are pure goal scorers, right? Maybe Couturier, but none of them really are. It's the roles that were well defined, right? Like, do you think you could compensate that way, though?
I think you could, but I don't know who with on this current roster that you would compensate that with.
Do you think Farabee will have it by the end of the year?
I want to trust him more and more, and I want the team's coaches to trust him more and more. I think he's getting more confident. And coming into this year, I wrote an article earlier in the year about it. Is the fact that he's put on muscle. He's not getting pushed around as much anymore. He's put on like 10 to 15 pounds of muscle. He's definitely more confident this year coming in, and he's definitely more willing to shoot the puck instead of maybe looking to a guy like Giroux sitting there on a team with him that he probably grew up watching throughout the years and saying, hey, I should probably give the puck to this guy. No, he realizes that, hey, I'm an NHL player too now. And, I have the right to take this shot when I see fit as well. So,
yeah, his conditioning has been fantastic. And that's the one thing that I love Farabee, and it's amazing. That's the one thing where, like, I just want to talk about Patrick and Lindblom for a second, because I know people want a lot of them, but I do see it with Patrick. His conditioning is not where it needs to be. And I don't think it's his fault at all. I think it'll get there. He's been a second half guy anyway, but obviously with the time lost. But you can even see it when he battles in the corner. A lot of times he'll lose his top step after his initial deke, which if you watch him in juniors, that was not the case. He was able to make that move to beat that guy. He has a lot of times he'll use like his one hand. He's going to take a little bit of time to develop anyway. He's a power forward type of guy, but he does not have the conditioning. But a guy like Farabee right now, no time off, no sophomore slump. And I'm like thinking none at all. And a guy like Wisdom, same thing. You know that these guys, their training and conditioning has gone to the next level. I think if Farabee can last the entire season, I think there is a chance that he might maybe take that role on the power play. Because right now the power play does not look dangerous. Those roles are open. I don't know. It would be nice to see another sniper, like another guy that you're scared to watch him shoot. It was like that with Ghost for a little bit in his younger part. But now it's like, we don't have that guy. We don't have that guy that if he gets that shot off, it's going in the net, like David Pasternak.
Right.
The goals that he scored against us, I mean, we don't do that stuff often. At least not the way we play. So, okay. So we're coming up to the next game. We have some good news, right? Claude Giroux's back. I don't believe Braun is back. I know he's coming. I think he's supposed to be cleared tomorrow.
He's close. Yeah, he's close.
He's close. So I don't think he's going to make the next game. He'll probably make the following one. However, Claude Giroux's back. First time he's missed a game. I think it was 700 games or something like that. He went.
Something crazy.
Yeah. I had a tweet about this. I mean, I think it is something to notice, though. I mean, he hasn't missed a game. We don't know what it's like without Giroux. That was the first time we experienced the Flyers without Giroux in all these years. And it was weird to think about. I feel like he was sorely missed. Do you think that Giroux's impact coming back in the next game would be a huge impact? I mean, I think with the amount of talent we missed so far. But what do you think? What do you think about Giroux's return? And he's had a lot of time off too. So
yeah, a lot of these kids look up to him, obviously, with the player that he is. So, I mean, I think that it'll definitely bring a jump to the Flyers game. In a sense, I would like to see Giroux get a little bit more physical, and I think the team would follow. If you look back to the earlier years in his career against the Penguins and such like that, when he came out hitting, when he came out hitting, the team took notice and said, "Man, like if he's doing this, I'm all in and doing it too." And I think we are a little bit more, capable of winning some games, some tougher games. And this setting that we're in this season, playing the same teams over and over again, I think that our weaknesses are going to be getting exploited by more teams than just Boston. Because we're seeing the same teams over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's going to be a problem later in the season if we don't correct those issues. So
I like that. I like that point about Giroux, and I agree. I think a team does follow. I mean, Mike Richards even prior, right? Like when Richards would go out there. Remember that? You definitely remember it. Remember on the way to the finals, Richards had that goal against the Canadiens. Everybody remembers his goal. He went like underneath Price. It was like this whole collision. He had a wide open net. And he buries it in backhand. And the whole crowd freaks out. That game was over. That goal, I remember watching. I remember turning to people and be like, Flyers won. Because I recognized what happened. I was like, the captain went out. He's like, I'm winning this game.
Right.
The team inevitably follows. Right. And they all carry that same attitude. They dominated their way all the way. You could just feel it. You could feel his momentum carry them. And there are other examples. Obviously, the popular Giroux hit when he hit Crosby. That game was over. He hit Crosby, went, scored the other game. Flyers won that game. That moment, that was already gave everybody, including the crowd, enough confidence to be like, Flyers are about to beat the Penguins. You know what I mean? You explained my point a lot better than I did. That is what I want to see from Giroux, and that's what I want to see from some of these veteran players is that Simmons ability. Right. He was excellent at that. That ability to put the team on his back and realize when they may be down a little bit and put the team on his back and carry them and show them the way that they should be playing, and it thus corrects itself. And the team jumps in and buys into it. And I think that we don't really have a player like that a whole lot. I like the physicality that Van Riemsdyk
is playing with this season, and that has elevated his game. I think he gets a lot more into the game, focused and producing when he's physical. Same goes for Nolan Patrick. At times before his last injury, when he was physical, you knew he was going to have an excellent game. And that's what I'm trying to get at when I write some of these articles, guys. If you're physically into the game, a lot of times you're going to have a stat sheet.
Yeah, it's the intensity. 100% agree with you. And this is what I was complaining about JVR last year is like, I was like, if you're going to play this way, you're going to find yourself out of the league. Like it's going to happen with $7 million. I was like, it's not going to happen. Some other kid's going to come and work harder than you and push you out of the way. And I mean like physically, like literally. And you could notice that he was losing battles. He's not losing battles this year, and it sets the tone and people follow. And I love what you said, that the veteran will go out, show the way to play, and things correct themselves.
Yes.
That is why we miss Matt Niskanen.
That's a true leader in my mind. That is a true leader.
Absolutely. They lead by example, they lead by doing, and they're consistent. And again, I believe Provorov is getting to this point, but he's still very young. It's a lot of pressure for a kid. Matt Niskanen with Provorov, that combination set the tone. Ghost is not infallible. He's a good, talented defenseman. In my opinion, he's getting a lot better. He's playing better hockey, but he's not that guy, like you're saying, shut down, who can play a perfect game, and I do see the potential, obviously, for Sanheim and Myers. They're going to get there. And Provorov, they're just kids. Niskanen, I've done a breakdown of Niskanen. His best years came in his veteran years. Statistically, everything. Once his game got in order, that's where, and he's not a big dude, very intense, never got beat physically. To your point, brought it every night. I wouldn't be surprised. And this is why Justin Braun gets minutes, and people might not understand that. Braun is intense. He doesn't bail on battles. He might not be as talented, which is the issue. Do you think anybody of the forward crop in particular is going to step up? Because I don't see anybody on D is going to be able to do that unless there's somebody who's traded. But do you see anybody on the forward crop that maybe is not doing that today that could start setting that tone as the season moves on, other than Farabee, who we mentioned earlier, who I think is doing that, by the way?
Yeah, I don't know. To the first point, though, with Braun, I think Braun, his downfall, he's a great veteran, and he's best suited probably at a third line or third pairing role right now. He was definitely not, capable of skating with the guys on the line with Provorov that he saw all the time. So that was his downfall this season when they were trying to move him up in the lineup and be that Matt Niskanen type veteran. But as far as the offense goes, I really like NAK right now. I think he's stepping up, and he's the one playing physical. He's the one that's never seems to take a shift off. And even when they're down in games, he's putting forth the effort every time out on the ice. And I think he gets those guys on his line, especially energized. And he's starting to produce more and more offensively as well, and kind of make him that Michael Raffle unrestricted free agent, I believe, at season's end, a little expendable at this point, and maybe he can just fall in line and take that role and allow somebody else from the system be able to come up and maybe take his role.
Yeah, because you're right, man. I mean, we haven't really talked much about them because they haven't played much, but obviously there's Allison, there's Ratcliffe, there's a bunch of young guys who aren't even here or in college that are going to come in. It's going to be tougher for NAK to grab those like top 9 spots, but he has. I love what NAK brings, especially in the long run, because if you follow his career, he was always a good two-way player, always from juniors to AHL, and now he's going to become that in the NHL. So he'll probably be a PK guy. He's always physical. He's like Travis Konechny in so many little ways, but he's not an elite scorer in any way, and he's definitely, I don't want to say he's bigger, but he's strong for his size. Konechny also is strong for his size, but NAK even more. He's a very thick kid. And I think as a long-term option for a bottom 6, I think he's a great option. And I'm glad to see he grabbed it.
I do too. I see a lot of like Scotty Lawton in him as a comparison that I would use. versatile, can play, up and down the lineup if need be, physical, like you said, and just, puts it all out there. And I think Philadelphia in years past, and that's what they appreciate. Maybe you're not the best player, but if you go out there and work hard every shift, they appreciate that, and you become a fan favorite very easily here, because Philadelphia people in general are hard workers.
Absolutely, I agree. Remember Kent Manderville? Remember Kent Manderville? The guy couldn't score a goal for like 2 years, and I cheered him every game to score a goal. I'm like, please, you work so hard, just score a goal. You know?
Yeah. Sammy Kapanen, Scotty Upshaw. Those are the players I think come to mind. Maybe not the most talented, but definitely great bottom six guys that just went out there and worked for everything they got. Yeah.
And it's funny, but those are the guys that probably win you championships at the end of the day, because everybody else kind of cancels out. I do think Scott Lawton is a key element. You mentioned him as a comparison. I do think he's a key element to winning a championship. He's also at risk for the expansion draft. I don't know exactly what the key is there. My thought there is that they probably won't sign him. He'll be exposed, but he won't be taken because he's going to be a UFA. So they have no control over him anyway. And I think the Flyers will probably re-sign him afterwards. As far as Raffl, we'll see. I think they love Raffl. I wouldn't be surprised if they even sign him for 13th forward. Like they bench him just because I think they love him. But I don't disagree with you. There are going to be so much young talent that's just going to come in here. We're going to have trouble keeping track. And think about what happened the other day. But Ratcliffe, Frost, Allison, and Lazinski, all four of them were injured. Okay. Obviously it never happens, but if those guys were all healthy, you're talking about another wave of more, like including the AHL guys we already had. You're just talking about another wave and another wave and another wave of talented young players. It's like inevitably something has to break. And if a guy like Wisdom is 18 years old, like, what else can we expect with some of the other guys? Like, some guys are going to come in and just shock us. Like, do you actually see let's bring him back. Do you see a guy like Wisdom even next year? I don't even know if it's possible, but if he continues on this path, do you think the Flyers would be open to bringing him in early? I would say with the ELC and what they're doing already, they seem open to it.
I think so. Prior guys and coaches here would not ever give the youngsters a shot, but AV is willing to, if they're willing to work. Intensity and Wisdom is all that. He brings that to the table, and I think he could, that versatility. He can play wing, he can play center, and of course we all know that AV thrives on that stuff. And I think he could come up, and like you said, if some injuries occur or this COVID comes up again in our locker rooms, I think he could be, one of the names that is called up. And maybe he did get passed by and overlooked because of his age, but I don't think that's going to be much of a problem moving forward if he continues on in this path. Like I said, with Raffl, he makes a guy like Raffl expendable if he can play wing, or could he take a Connor Bunneman's spot? Do you want to see a youngster like that be stuck on a fourth line role? No, but I mean, if he's producing on that fourth line role and can do it on a regular basis, I don't think that in the NHL today, a fourth line is the fourth line of, say, 10 years ago. A fourth line has to be able to put like points on the board. Yeah, it's
almost like the third line.
It's almost like a third line. Yeah, but definitely it's more of the checking line, because everybody nowadays, all the teams have 3 solid lines at least. And I would put to it, have 4.
Yeah.
If everybody's healthy, we have a solid 4 lines that I would be willing to put out there on rotation to stop from having to put out that first line so much.
Yeah. And to your point, I mean, if you look at the generations, it used to be like you had a top 6, your third line was the fourth line today, essentially, and your fourth line was the goon line.
Yeah.
Your fourth line, your fourth line was the guys you barely played that you would send out there to bang, to crash, to cause energy. Now, you kind of do that with the fourth line today, But it's kind of like every line is expected to do that at this point, to bang and crash and to cause energy. But the fourth line is now your defensive line, and the top 9 is expected to score.
Yeah.
If you're a top 9, you're expected to produce points. If you're on the bottom line, that's where you can get away with maybe putting up 20 points a year, 10 points a year. But if you're in that top 9 in the NHL today on a good team to great team, the champion, you better be producing. I mean, if you look at a team like Tampa Bay, right, who's the Stanley Cup champion, they have 50-point players on their third line. If you look at the Flyers today, we have 50-point players on our third line, and then some. Every good team in the league now is going to be able to produce in their top 9 overall. So let me ask you about this. We talked about the D. We're confident in the offensive depth. A guy like Ekholm has been floating around the name. I really like him. I don't know if he's actually available. I never really believe these rumors until they come to fruition, but I could see it because maybe Nashville's trying to, spice stuff up, try to change stuff up. They have a lot of D. Are you interested in a guy like Ekholm? Do you think that is worth the price? And is that something you would even consider doing with expansion and everything kind of coming up? But is that the type of player you consider to kind of fill that void? And would you want to see the Flyers go after a guy like Ekholm, or somebody better? Or worse?
Yeah, actually, I'm working on a piece right now. Not
Okay,
him. Not him per se, but I'm not trying to give it away.
Yeah,
I'm still polishing it up, but I like him per se. He's a great shutdown defender, and but I think he might cost the team, not price wise, but with everything that it's going to take to acquire him, I think it might be a little too much. I have another name in mind that has the rings to prove it, like Niskanen did. He is pretty pricey salary wise, but I believe he is even more so of that shutdown defender that we're looking for, and could bring that teaching aspect back in, and calmness aspect to the rest of the defensive core. Yes. That's what we had when Niskanen was here.
It actually makes me upset that we didn't try to get Zdeno Chara in here at all. That maybe we should have forced that issue, because I don't know if he would have obviously played maybe he would have been Braun's replacement more than Niskanen, because the age and everything. But again, just another voice like that, I do think it's huge, and I think I can kind of guess the player you're talking about. I don't want to, but there are times we traded Timonen for a couple high picks, right? He barely played. That didn't matter. They wanted him in the room. I would kill to have a guy's voice like that in the room, but a guy who can really play an impact game and bring that on the ice and to show it, like you were saying, I think is a huge part in those. That we're seeing it this year, and I think the penalty kill is the best time. Those are the most tense moments defensively, right? Mm-hmm. Where every inch that you give away could end up being a goal. That is the moments that we're failing, where we were holding up last year. And the coaching staff sees this, but I agree with you. In the type of climate we're in, can we even afford to trade for a guy like Ekholm financially? I will say this. I hope we do bring somebody else in that won't damage us, and I think we will. I don't know how great he'll be, but I do think we'll bring somebody else in. I hope they're great. If I'm guessing the person, that's probably my number one choice, if we can say it off camera. But whatever that choice needs to be, it needs to be somebody who can lead that room, that group. And that's what I'd be looking to do. And it has to be from a team that's probably out of the playoffs, right? They have to be bad. They have to be willing to get rid of this guy, because they're not going to want to. Niskanen, they did not want to get rid of Niskanen, and they had to. That was not an equal trade. I don't know what people were talking about at the time. I remember hearing all that. I was like, what are you guys talking about? Gudis? I was like, I like Gudis, but he's a third pairing defenseman.
Right.
If we can find another situation like that, that's what I want to take advantage of. You guys need cap. You need something. I got a bunch of picks. I got a bunch of young players. Right. It's time. I think it is time. I don't know if it's time to go bang or bust. I don't want to go nuts, but it is time to at least be like, hey, we have a pretty good team here. We shouldn't just throw a season away to keep maybe a draft pick or a young player. We have to do something, right? And if we're noticing this problem, let's say another 20 games down the season, towards the trade deadline, I mean, I suspect they're going to have to do something, right?
Yeah, I definitely think so. And that's why all those points you just hit is what I was thinking on the person that I was picking. The team that he's on is not very good. They're probably going to miss the playoffs yet again. They are not one of those huge destination teams that people are going to want to come back to. They oftentimes have to overpay players just to come in there. So
I might not know who this is.
I think you don't. I don't think a lot of people even know his name. That is the thing. Yeah. So
then I'm going to say who I was thinking. I was thinking Duncan Keith, which I don't think is possible, and now I can tell it's not Duncan Keith.
That salary is well above our means.
Oh, of course.
Duncan Keith is phenomenal defenseman, but under that same pretenses, but on a lesser team that is definitely going to not be in the playoffs as well. Huge. So it should be somebody like that. And I believe that we need to make that move at this point. I think with Giroux and Voracek and some of these guys getting older and older, we have a great opportunity, as we've seen last year, to be a contender. Yeah. And we might just be that one or two players away from being a contender. Now, somebody like Chara, I think, he signed for cheap. Everybody's like, oh, why didn't the Flyers offer him a contract? Look, I think he could have more than double or got triple the amount of money that he got from a lot of other teams, but he wanted to go play in Washington, and he thought that would give him the best opportunity to win a championship playing with Ovechkin and that first line that they have that is phenomenal. Obviously Boston was there, last season as well, but I think that, his time there pretty much ran its course, and they had a bunch of younger defensemen there that are maybe not as big as name as him, but are definitely capable. And, they wanted to give them a little bit more ice time.
Yeah. I think they told him they wanted to give him a number 7 role. And he was like, I'm good.
No, I can be a bigger factor on another team and still produce. And I think he has in Washington. So,
yeah. And it's interesting because this division feels so different, which actually gets me to my last point of this. I do hope we go and get somebody. I will say this before we move on. When the Flyers lost in the finals to Chicago, and I don't want to say we lost because of goaltending. I know it's easy to just put it on Michael Leighton. I'm sure he still does. We didn't lose. He also played really well to get us there, and so did the other guys. Having said that, we lost Ray Emery early in that year. We lost him. We knew he was out all year. We never replaced him. Okay. We weren't sure if we were going to the finals, right? We even kind of like barely made it in at the end, even though we were a great team and somehow collapsed and blah, blah, blah. The entire time, the only thing I can think about is Holmgren's biggest mistake as GM, by far, in my opinion, was not getting another goalie going into that playoff run. That's the only thing we really needed. We even went in with 4 defensemen. We didn't even have enough defensemen. And I think back to this moment this year where you're like, you recognize an immediate problem. You recognize that you have, of course, my dog's going to start barking. You recognize that you have to fill that need, and you recognize that you have a potential championship team. If you don't fill that need and you find yourself in a championship game and you lose because you don't have the defensive depth you need, man, like that's all I can think in my head. And it doesn't mean I want us to panic and go out and get desperate. And I don't think this team's competing 1 year and then done either. I think we're on a long run here. So I don't think it's necessarily at that point. But I want to make sure the Flyers don't do that again.
Sure. I get your point there as well. I think that they don't need to go get that, elite level guy and spend $7 million and block every single person that's coming up, like Cam York and Zumala and Mason Millman, all these guys are coming, and Wiley Wyatt. Yep. Phenomenal talents that are coming on defense. The reinforcements are coming, and that's why, they signed Gustafsson to maybe a 1-year deal. And I wish they signed Braun to a 1-year deal as well, because
he is tradable, at least. I would say that deal is tradable.
I think so. And, that's what we need out of this person if they do decide to get somebody else at the deadline or before, hopefully, is somebody with maybe an expiring contract that even if they have to pay him a little bit more money, it's gone at the end of the season.
Expiring.
And that place in the lineup is then open for one of these younger guys to compete for, because we have a plethora of defensemen already. As you see, we're making them be wingers. Now we have so many of them.
I don't want to see that anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I'm good with that. That was a neat trick, but didn't work. Yeah. So I think that they do need to go out, like you said, and acquire a guy, veteran, on the cheap, on an expiring deal, and suit this need and solidify this defense once again.
Yeah, and I think we'll probably see something. I think I don't know what's going to happen, right? I didn't expect a Matt Niskanen trade. I loved that trade when it happened. I do think Fletcher's done a good job trading. I don't want to get excited for this year. Having said that, I do, in my gut, think that the Flyers will probably go the route that you're talking about, right? Like what we're saying. They're going to go more practical, and I think it's what they should do. But I do see, after getting past expansion, there is an opportunity for a large move as well, potentially, to maybe even get a superstar defenseman in here. Do you have any interest in that? And I'm just going to throw out a name. I don't know if this is somebody, but like Drew Doughty, okay? I don't know if, obviously he makes a monster amount too, so this might not be the best name to throw out. But Drew Doughty, right, a guy of that caliber. A team like LA is not that good. Maybe they just want to restart. There's other defensemen that are kind of in similar positions. Next year, let's say we don't win, right? Let's say we're, I don't know, second round knockout again. Do you want to go after a big name like that?
That's tough.
Shea Weber, you know what I mean? It's like back to that era.
Yeah.
We're looking for that name.
I think that would be nice, but I think it's impractical with the fact that we're going to have to pay Scott Lawton. We're going to have to pay Sanheim. We're going to have to pay Carter Hart. He's coming off an entry-level deal that we're obviously going to have to pay him more than the $700,000 or $800,000 that he's currently making a year, and it's going to take up a lot of cap space. So I don't think that the space is going to be there financially to be able to even pull that off, to bring in somebody of that caliber. So I don't even want to get my hopes up in that sense. I think that the team is hoping that one of these young defenders can develop, and maybe somebody like Myers can develop a little bit more this season and take over that first line spot with Provorov, and maybe bring in a guy, younger like they did with Myers, and maybe slot him in with Sanheim or something on the second pairing.
Yeah, no, I think you nailed that. It's kind of like a trap question, right? Because we all want it because
sure.
And again, if you look at that trade, it is a brilliant trade by Holmgren, because he wasn't making much money, but bringing in Chris Pronger changed this team. I mean, overnight, it changed the team. It was noticeable. When he went down, the defense went down. Like, they just were a whole different caliber after that. Again, set the tone. That's definitely real. But I do agree with you. I don't think that they're going to do that. I don't think that move is coming. If it is, it's because we screwed up. It's because we're not good.
Yeah, I think Hatcher was another guy that was brought in and set that tone well too, and he brought that Stanley Cup talent with him, and he'd been there and done that before, and was well suited. He wasn't scared during the playoffs, and never faltered. So there's definitely a lot of names out there that could be done, and I think I got one coming that could be best suited for us in all those factors in line. So
last topic here. Let's close out on this. We played a bunch of games so far, not that many. Do you think the Flyers have a new rival? This is a weird division. Is Boston the new rival for the Flyers? Like the actual rivals? Like it was the Pens, it was the Rangers at one point, kind of, back in the day. Mm-hmm. Been the Devils in the past.
Yeah, definitely. It goes through different changes. Yeah. And I think that Pittsburgh is going to be rebuilding for years. Obviously, we know the great GM Hextall is there now, so he's going to probably try to save those draft picks that they were giving away for years and years and years.
It's a painful process.
Yes, and use them to rebuild that team. So right now, the most competitive team and the most fierce games that I see the team playing against is Boston, and I believe that they're going to be good for some time now. And they have some great physical players in Trent Frederick, which I wrote a piece on before he got his chance with the Bruins. That would be that guy that we could acquire. But, now he's got a shot and he's shining and he brings that physical presence. And as you've seen in that last game on Lake Tahoe, I think both teams were hitting and getting in each other's face and a little bit. And that rivalry, if they see each other more and more as the season progresses, it definitely could be just that Penn's rivalry that we had for years and years and years with Sidney Crosby and the likes of that team. So yeah, they just seem to be that new team that's coming up and is going to be here for a number of years as a thorn in our sides.
Yeah. And you look at the way we lost them. I mean, a couple blown losses, one blowout, then the loss of Lake Tahoe. These are all things to get under, at least as a fan, and definitely as a team, under the team's skin. Right. Flyers still have, I believe, 4 games left to play. 4 games, I believe, left to play Boston.
I think so. I think so, yeah.
So that is still a substantial amount of time to meet them. The Flyers have yet to put out their best unit, their lineup against Boston. I suspect that this is going to become a very intense series because the Flyers are going to want to prove that they're just as good as Boston, because I think on paper they are. In execution, no. Add Matt Niskanen, maybe. We are missing that element. I agree with you. Unfortunately, it's a reality. And that's why Ghost is playing top pairing, right? And that's why they were hesitant with Myers. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if they make a trade. So far, they're still a good team, so it's not the end of the world. But I agree. They need something to kind of slow the game down on the back end a little bit and remind everybody that you're in control type of thing.
Yeah, with the addition of Niskanen last year, I think that took us out of that expectations of just relying on one defender throughout the seasons with the Flyers. You saw, Provorov. Before him, it was Timonen that played enormous amounts of minutes, and the weight was on him. Before that, it was Desjardins who played.
Well, we had Pronger and Timonen together, and then that was the cup team,
right? And that was that group. They brought Pronger in, but he didn't get to stick around for too long. And now Niskanen didn't get to stick around for too long. He was just had enough.
Happens often, huh?
Yeah. So when you get one of those guys, it's you got to capitalize on it. So
yeah. Well, hopefully, I agree. It's not time to do anything. You don't want to get in the way of the other guys, but man, we could use another voice like that in the room. So we'll see what happens. Maybe Braun or maybe another guy will be part of a package. Maybe the Flyers will overpay eventually down the line. We'll see what happens. We'll see how good the team gets. All right, Lance, we're here at the end. Tell people where they can follow you. Let them know. Obviously, you said a little bit about what you're working on. Obviously, the hockey writers, what everything else.
Yeah, definitely, guys. You can always find my articles on flyersnittygritty.com. My Twitter follow, if you want to follow me, is LNGBASSIST, the number's 39. And as always, I have my own podcast with my co-host Steel Flyers called The Hockey Writers Inc. So if you see that on Flyers Nitty Gritty or Bleacher Report, please give it a view.
Awesome. Well, Lance, this was a really good conversation. I felt like this was a geek out conversation over the Flyers. So it was really easy to have that conversation. All right. One more shout out to Jim Steaks on South. Thank you again for Jim Steaks. Awesome sponsor. Again, they are Flyers fans, so make sure to buy your cheesesteaks from them and from no one else. All right. For everybody else who's listening, like, subscribe, definitely comment. I read stuff. If you guys write to Lance, I'll make sure he sees it as well. And thank you for everybody. Thank you for listening. Have more stuff. Later this week, I have the Always Level Up podcast coming out with Riley Cote. I'm pretty excited about that. It was a really awesome conversation. So more stuff to come. And then next week, I haven't booked it yet, but I'll have Russ Cohen back on here with Michael Augello. If you guys who don't know who that is, they typically do the Hockey Buzz podcast together. So I'm pretty excited to get the two of them on as a unit. But yeah, thank you to everybody for listening. And remember to always stay gritty.